Well, four of the top 15 win share leaders from last season have inked deals with Western Conference teams. Jimmy Butler heads west, part of that draft day trade with the Timberwolves. The Warriors re-signed their two stars and more. And don't forget about Paul George, how could we, who will join forces with the reigning MVP. On the other hand, only one of the top 15 win share leaders went west to east, with Gordon Hayward joining the Celtics. J.J. Redick will be making $23 million next season with the Sixers, and Kelly Olynyk is heading to Miami. And for more, we welcome in our NBA brass of Ryan Russillo, Mike Wise, and Tom Haberstroh. And Tom, I'll start with you. Put into context for us the disparity that now exists between the two conferences in terms of the top players.
It's crazy, the imbalance between the two conferences. You could look at Jimmy Butler just got traded to the Western Conference. You look at Paul George to OKC and Paul Millsap signing with Denver. That's 25% of the All-Star team in the East last year going to the West. And if you look elsewhere, I mean, all the other all-NBA teams are littered with Western Conference players. And you look at the all-defensive team last year, 10 guys, only one of them was from the Eastern Conference last year, Giannis Antetokounmpo. So the Western Conference is absolutely stacked, and with those three deals, Paul Millsap, Paul George, and Jimmy Butler, that is an incredible lopsided conference.
Ryan.
I was expecting at some point, Tom, and I know we've talked about this. I mean, this was a concern, the East versus West 10 years ago, and you go, it's cyclical, it'll figure out. It's getting worse.
Yes.
Now I'm just wondering, is it just these teams loading up? I mean, it's not like Jimmy Butler went to L.A. I mean, he ended up getting traded to Minnesota with a coach that was already there, so it can't just be location here.
I love Tom's article, but I thought he completely disrespected some of the great stars in the Eastern Conference. Now, Ryan had talked last hour about...
I sense sarcasm.
No, but I mean, he said you want to put these two teams together on a court, and you say, who's going to win the playground game, all right? So I'm going to not play by the position game. I'm going to take DeMar DeRozan, John Wall, Kyrie Irving, Isaiah Thomas, and LeBron James. You're telling me that team, Tom, is not going to break down all your West stars?
All right, well, let's get into the actual article, first of all. I mean, if you look at the two...
Are you saying I misread it correctly?
No, I'm not.
Yeah.
I would never, ever think you wouldn't read correctly there, Mike. I know you. You're one of the best out there. Best readers ever. So I was looking at the...
Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Tom.
Yep.
I was looking at the star power of the Western Conference, and they go two teams deep. I mean, you're looking at a starting lineup of Damian Lillard, Klay Thompson, Paul Millsap, Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan, Rudy Gobert. You take your pick. It's going to be just as good as the Eastern Conference All-Star team, and if you actually look at the number of wins above replacement, it's a player value metric using ESPN's Real Plus Minus.
Yeah.
If you look at like an all-in-one metric and total them all up, the Western Conference actually has more player value than the Eastern Conference. The B team, the second set of 12 best players, actually has better value than the first
Billy
team.
Bean. I mean,
you buy that the second team in the West can beat the #1 team in the East?
No, I don't believe that at all. And Ryan and I, we celebrate the game. We don't calibrate it. Okay, so stop it already, Haberstroh.
Well, see, talking about how good the Western Conference is, not celebrating how good the league is.
No, I'm just saying, you make like Gordon Hayward's out to be a defector or something, like he's gone to some country that he's been quarantined. I mean, he went to a decent franchise.
Look, when you look at those, though, B Team West, A Team, like, he's not wrong. The toughest thing for that article for the East, Tom, is that you have Lowry as the 12th best player in the NBA and the second best player in the East. So, like, some people are going to read that part of it and go, well, man, the East is screwed if we're talking Lowry is the 12th best player.
And also Horford being, like, off your bench in the All-Star game. I like Al Horford. Yeah, that was a
You know what I love what you said, Tom? You said it on SportsCenter a few days ago. Just get rid of the conferences and make it 1 through 16, right? I mean, no East, no West. We get the best ball come the postseason, best teams in the postseason.
I don't like things like that, but this
not?
has gone on for so long. Because I just think that if we did that all the time, then every 3 years people would get upset and be like, why do we have NFL divisions? Why don't we just move everyone to Tokyo? You know? It's just like, well,
Ryan, there's a lot of GMs out there who agree with you that say, why do we keep re-changing the rules every year based on what happened the previous year? But
this is too long.
Adam Silver was talking about this 2 years ago.
Yeah,
this wasn't something just new.
No, you're
this
right.
has been going on for years.
Yeah, I mean, that was the point of what I was like. This is the one where I go, this has gone on for so long.
Well, part of this is sarcasm, but look, these are still players, and these are still decent teams. I understand the star power is West. Maybe Adam Silver's got to address that at some point. But Tom acts like, you know, that this is essentially the Eastern Conference is now you just need to contract it, put Cleveland in the West, and make the rest an expansion draft.
Mike is on a mission, Tom. He plans to bury you in your analytics.
I mean, I never said that it's Siberia or anything like that, Mike. You're putting words in my mouth, but
I probably am.
What I'm trying to say is, like, you look at all NBA, you look at all defensive team, you look at all the all-star rosters. I mean, there is no argument that the Western Conference is vastly better, or there is no argument that it isn't. I mean, I just think when you put it into terms of there are two teams at the very least as good as the very best team in the Eastern Conference. Is that fair?
We got it. Well said. We'll leave it there. Tom, thank you, of course, and Ryan and Mike, good debate as always. Fun talking about this stuff. Thanks. Tony.
You know, but it can't stop.
This Saturday night, Amanda Nunes defends her UFC bantamweight title for the second time in a rematch from March 2016 against Valentina Shevchenko. Nunes has won 7 fights in the bantamweight division since making her debut in 2013. That's the most of any fighter. UFC insider Brett Okamoto joins us now on SportsCenter. Brett, this one's going to be good. The main event tomorrow, Nunes defending her title against Shevchenko. How do these two match up?
They match up very, very close. You know, you mentioned that first fight in March of last year. Amanda Nunes won the first 2 rounds, and then Shevchenko rallied, nearly put Amanda Nunes away, I felt like, in the 3rd round. Had her in trouble, and had the fight gone on 2 more rounds, as this one will be. It's a 5-round fight. A lot of people think Shevchenko would have won, so a lot of interest in this rematch. And what's interesting is that you look at what the 2 fighters have done since then. Amanda Nunes has submitted Miesha Tate in the 1st round. She knocked out Ronda Rousey. She demolished Ronda Rousey in December. So you would think all of the momentum would be with her. She was actually the betting underdog earlier this week in Las Vegas. So that just tells you what people think of Valentina Shevchenko. She's a very talented fighter herself.
That's definitely going to be a battle in the octagon. Now, the other title on the line tomorrow night has Robert Whittaker taking on Cuban Yoel Romero for the interim middleweight championship, as Michael Bisping is unavailable to defend his title due to a knee injury. What should we be watching for in this bout?
You know, this is a really interesting situation because, as you mentioned, this is for an interim title, but the real champion, Michael Bisping, he's still talking about fighting George St. Pierre later this year. That's the fight he really wants, is to fight George St. Pierre. So it would be just a very fascinating situation if the UFC crowned an interim champion, and then that interim champion did not go on and face the real champion in Michael Bisping. Look, this is going to be a great fight on Saturday. Romero has won 8 in a row. Whittaker has won 7 in a row. So you're talking about 2 of the absolute elite middleweights. And what I'll be watching for is a great fight. And then what do they say after? What does the winner say after? Because I can guarantee you he will be calling out Michael Bisping.
Ay. All right, now former UFC champion Anthony Pettis, he's making his return to the octagon for the first time since December. Pettis says his goal in returning is to make people want to watch him fight again. What are people around UFC saying about his return?
Yeah, you know, I think people do want to see Anthony Pettis fight again, but they want to see him fight like himself. You know, 2 years ago, he suffered a really, really bad loss to Rafael dos Santos. He took a lot of damage in that fight, and I just think he's sort of been searching for his identity ever since then. He tried to fix a lot of things in his game and sort of forgot about what got him here. He tried moving down a weight class. He missed weight for his last fight in December. Now he's back up at his original weight class, and I think that maybe that's a good sign for him. You know, he's saying, I kind of hit rock bottom. I got desperate. I tried changing the weight class. It didn't work out. I'm just going to go back to being myself. I'm not going to put so much pressure on myself. Sometimes when you're in the middle of a losing streak, as he is, he's lost 4 of his last 5, it can remove a little bit of the pressure in a weird way, and he seems to be in a good place going into this fight.
UFC 213 coming at us from Las Vegas Saturday night. That's our Brett Okamoto with the insight here on SportsCenter. Thank you, Brett.
Very busy. For a good reason, Celtics fans. You can only hope. Breaking news here. Celtics are trading guard Avery Bradley and a future second-round pick to Detroit for forward Marcus Morris. League sources telling our Adrian Wojnarowski Bradley averaged over 16 points per game and 6 rebounds last season. The trade will clear the needed salary cap space to sign free agent Gordon Hayward, who agreed to a $128 million maximum contract on Tuesday. So the Pistons, get Bradley in a 2018 second-round pick in exchange for Marcus Morris. While trading Bradley gave Boston salary cap flexibility this offseason, this move has a lot to do with 2018 as well. Bradley set to become a free agent along with Isaiah Thomas in 2018. And Wojo joins us now. And let me tell Adrian, how did this come about?
Linda, Boston, since they got the commitment from Gordon Hayward in free agency, they've had to create some salary cap space to sign him to a max deal. And in doing that, they were out shopping Avery Bradley, Marcus Smart, and Jay Crowder. They closed in here in the last several hours on a deal with the Pistons, which Boston sends out Bradley and a second-round pick for Marcus Morris. For the Celtics, it gives them the ability now to sign Hayward into their salary cap space, and Detroit gets a tremendous two-way player in Avery Bradley, who I think going forward was going to be difficult for the Celtics to pay him his market value, which could be as much as $20 million a year.
You know, let's talk about Detroit a little bit. So how does Bradley fit in with them? I mean, where do they go from here to here? Or, I mean, how will that work with their roster?
He is perfect. I mean, Stan Van Gundy has been looking for that tough-minded two-way player at the guard position. He can score the ball. He defends. He's an elite defender at his position. And it gives them now an option. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who's a restricted free agent, he could potentially go out and get a max offer sheet from a team like Otto Porter did in Washington. Detroit has been very reluctant to pay him that kind of money, and it gives Detroit now the flexibility to maybe not have to keep Caldwell-Pope. They could work on a sign and trade with another team and get some assets back for him, but now they have an alternative here if they don't go forward with him. You know, Avery Bradley's a player who I think the Pistons are going to be very aggressive in trying to extend long term.
Back to Boston, Wojo. Is this it for Danny Ainge for now?
Well, this was a major piece. They had to get this done here in the last 24 hours to get the Hayward agreement signed. Boston still needs some more size up front, some more strength. They need to be able to rebound and defend the rim better, and I think that's something Boston now will be able to address here between now and the start of training camp.
All right, Adrian Wojnarowski, who broke this story. Avery Bradley, now a Detroit Piston. For more on this, we welcome back our NBA analyst, Ryan Russillo, and, of course, our senior writer from the Undefeated, Mike Wise. And, Ryan, what about this deal by Danny Ainge, the way he made this deal at this time? What do you think about that?
You could argue this deal isn't about Avery Bradley or Marcus Morris. It's about Gordon Hayward and getting the room to sign him, and also the fear of Kentavious Caldwell-Pope for the Pistons and not wanting to bring him back if he gets a huge offer this summer. So Bradley is the better player, but Bradley is going to be far more expensive next season when he becomes a free agent. So Detroit should be thrilled they have him for 1 year. Boston knew they had to make a move to get that extra money. Bradley's better than Marcus Smart. He's better than Jay Crowder. But Jay Crowder is incredibly inexpensive in today's NBA, so they wanted to keep him there. So Bradley, you don't want to lose him, but they had to move one of those guys, and he was going to cost them so much next year. This move is about the 2018 free agency for the Celtics.
I just feel like I didn't want them to see them move Avery Bradley because he's one of these guys that developed in their system. As a two-way player, you don't get that. You get a guy who's an elite defender, or you get a guy who's a competent shooting guard that can spot up from anywhere. This guy's starting to be both. And so, as I said last hour, I feel like Gordon Hayward's got to be good. He's got to be really good. And also, you know, look, we sat in the studio last week just killing Danny Ainge for sitting around. He heard us, obviously. I mean, beyond Paul George and Chris Paul, I mean, you could say that this was the coup of the free agent period, getting Gordon Hayward. And now if I could have moved Marcus Smart first, I would have, and they probably couldn't because they only had a certain time to do this. You know, it's tough decisions.
I love that Marcus Smart is still on the Celtics roster, Ryan, but now I'm picturing Jay Crowder in all likelihood will stay in Boston, and I'm seeing that dynamic duo of Hayward and Jay Crowder. How do you think that looks on this team?
the thing with Crowder is that I think traditionally in basketball you would have gone, well, wait a minute, now you have two small forwards, and then you have Tatum, and then you have Jaylen Brown. That's just not what the league is anymore.
Right.
Like, how many guys can we put out there that can get us buckets? And it's not really position defined anymore. You don't really worry about that stuff.
And I actually Warriors, right?
Yeah, right. You know, I think that's what a concept. Can we just put the best players out there instead of just making sure 1 6'10" and 1 6'7"? So I like what Boston has here. The real problem for the Celtics is that you go after Hayward because you go after those guys.
Yeah.
And there is going to be collateral damage. But when that cap projection came out a few million lower than what everybody thought, the Celtics end up in a situation like this. But they were going to have to make a big decision on Bradley at some point anyway. And even though Marcus Morris isn't perfect for them, he's only $5 million plus this year and next year, which is an incredibly cheap number for a starting player in today's NBA.
I don't think the Celtics are done, by the way. In between our break, I got a text from somebody that say they are now interested in Jamal Crawford. They're another one of his suitors if the buyout can be made with Atlanta. Does that make sense for them?
Yeah.
Well, it would be another shooter, which seems to be what everybody's trying to do, like death by shooting. But they need at some point, they need to figure out how they're going to balance out the rest of this front line, because Horford and Marcus Morris, like, that's not a great rebounding group, and rebounding was probably their biggest flaw as a playoff caliber team last season. So, you know, this stuff isn't over. July, we still got some time here.
Death by shooting. I prefer death by chocolate, and it is World Chocolate Day. So I just want to tie. It is. I want to hashtag World Chocolate Day, Ryan. I expect that from you. You guys are going to be back later to talk about, all right, the disparity, and it is huge between the East and West when you're talking about superstars. Thanks, guys. Tony. Breaking news here on SportsCenter, the Boston Celtics, they're busy. They traded guard Avery Bradley to the Pistons for forward Marcus Morris, according to league sources, telling our Adrian Wojnarowski Bradley averaged over 16 points per game, 6 rebounds last season. The Celtics have been aggressively trying to create enough salary cap room to give Gordon Hayward the 4-year, $128 million maximum contract he agreed to on Tuesday. Bradley spent his first 7 seasons in the NBA, all with the Celtics. He posted career highs in points per game, rebounds per game, and assists per game, although he played just 55 games, his fewest since 2012-2013. And Wojo joins us now. And let me to Adrian, how did this come about?
Linda, Boston, since they got the commitment from Gordon Hayward in free agency, they've had to create some salary cap space to sign him to a max deal. And in doing that, they were out shopping Avery Bradley, Marcus Smart, and Jay Crowder. They closed in here in the last several hours on a deal with the Pistons, which the Boston sends out Bradley and a second-round pick for Marcus Morris. For the Celtics, it gives them the ability now to sign Hayward into their salary cap space, and Detroit gets a tremendous two-way player in Avery Bradley, who just, I think, going forward was going to be difficult for the Celtics to pay him his market value, which could be as much as $20 million a year.
You know, let's talk about Detroit a little bit. So how does Bradley fit in with them? I mean, where do they go from here to here? Or, I mean, how will that work with their roster?
He is perfect. I mean, Stan Van Gundy has been looking for that tough-minded two-way player at the guard position. He can score the ball. He defends. He's an elite defender at his position. And it gives them now an option. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who's a restricted free agent, he could potentially go out and get a max offer sheet from a team like Otto Porter did in Washington. Detroit has been very reluctant to pay him that kind of money, and it gives Detroit now the flexibility to maybe not have to keep Caldwell-Pope. They could work on a sign and trade with another team and get some assets back for him, but now they have an alternative here if they don't go forward with him. You know, Avery Bradley's a player who I think the Pistons are going to be very aggressive in trying to extend long term.
Back to Boston, Wojo. Is this it for Danny Ainge for now?
Well, this was a major piece. They had to get this done here in the last 24 hours to get the Hayward agreement signed. Boston still needs some more size up front, some more strength. They need to be able to rebound and defend the rim better, and I think that's something Boston now will be able to address here between now and the start of training camp.
All right, Adrian Wojnarowski, who broke this story. Avery Bradley, now a Detroit Piston. Let's talk more about it. We welcome in our NBA analyst, Ryan Russillo, and, of course, the writer for The Undefeated, none other than Mike Wise. And, Ryan, I'm going to start with you. When you first heard about this, that Wojo broke this story, what came to mind?
A bunch of different things. We knew that the restrictions on the salary for Boston is something they're going to have to work with, and Avery Bradley's $8 million this year, so bringing in Morris, they save some money because he's $5 million for this year and next. So there's a cheaper alternative there. Jay Crowder, to keep him, is a cheaper alternative. He's under contract, so Bradley was going to become really expensive, not just this year, but next year when he becomes a free agent. On the other side for Detroit, their salary sheet is a mess. They're paying a lot of guys that aren't that good a lot of money, and they're worried about Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. So now this means, as a restricted free agent for Pope, if he was offered a major deal from someone else, then they might not necessarily care about it now because they have somebody like Bradley who'd be part of their future.
Well, I was going to say, Gordon Hayward better be good. I mean, he better be very good because of all the guys I didn't want to see them lose if I were the Celtics.
It was him, Bradley?
It was him. I would have rather seen Marcus Smart go. And Crowder, I don't know, he would have been a tough go. But Avery Bradley is that skill player that's developed year after year. He's gotten better year after year. And I understand you have to make tough decisions. You're not going to be able to pay him in a year. Both he and Isaiah Thomas come up next year. So, look, I think it's going to be a huge addition. I feel like the Celtics are, were gritty enough, but Marcus Morris only makes them grittier. I think he's played 79, 81, 82 games the last 3 years, hasn't had an injury problem, 14 points a game last 2 seasons, 5 rebounds. I mean, this is a good pickup for them. You're right. They needed someone to take the load off Al Horford down low a little bit. But I hate losing Avery Bradley.
What do you think?
That's why I'd be a lousy GM, because I'd hold on to players that I shouldn't.
I know, right? So, you couldn't work in this world of the NBA. Ryan, so how do they look on the court now, the Boston Celtics?
Well, they have wing depth that, even though I agree with Mike and how much you like Avery Bradley because of his defense, they'll be able to get by without this.
Smart plays great defense, though.
Oh, Smart's terrific. Smart is one of the best small guards that defends bigger players. What he does to some of these guys that are much bigger than him in the post, it's embarrassing for the Smart just owns him. But offensively, he's not necessarily Bradley, and Bradley was still a little inconsistent at times. But now we're talking about that front line, as Woj just mentioned. The Celtics still need size because the Horford-Morris pairing, rebounding-wise, that's not a good group. So now we're looking at a team that was the worst rebounding team in the playoffs going into last year. So, look, free agency isn't over yet. Like, they don't have to worry about the playoffs next week. So we'll see what the next move is there to try to add somebody that has more of a rebounding background. But it makes sense with Morris because of the offense and the fact that his salary is cheaper than Bradley. This is all about how expensive Bradley would have been next year than what happened today.
Yeah, and this is all about getting Gordon Hayward and make sure he's in the fray, and you don't have to worry about him. And then you can, as you said, go after the next guy.
You know who else doesn't have to worry about the playoffs, and actually for quite some time? I believe the New York Knicks. That's right. I'm sorry. I'm a Knicks fan, and I'm like, what? I thought we were rebuilding. What gives, Ryan? Tim Hardaway Jr., 4 years, $71 million? What happened? What's going on with Steve Mills here? Is Phil Jackson calling him up from a foreign place? Why make this deal?
Phil traded this guy, so maybe Steve wanted him back.
Steve's favorites.
Here's the problem with restricted free agency, okay? You have to construct a contract that's so bad that
Love
the team that has the player,
you like
right?
that?
Holy sheet.
Yes.
Yeah, that you have to discourage the team from wanting to match that contract. And the reward of that is then now you get the player with the bad contract. So
Atlanta's not matching this.
Yeah,
no way, right?
Probably not. But look, nobody in Washington thought that Otto Porter was going to get a deal offered for $106 million. So here's the deal. I don't think there is any real true free agency. It's the value of that player to that team. I mean, if Kirk Cousins, was on the market right now, and I guess he kind of is, but he wouldn't be next year. The New England Patriots would have nothing to do with him because they've already got a quarterback. Right. It depends on it depends on what you need.
But don't the Knicks already have Courtney Lee, who plays the same position as Tim Hardaway Jr.?
Yeah, and they're paying him a good chunk. The problem with this is where the J.J. Redick thing works out. You go, okay, I'm going to pay you an absurd amount of money for 1 year, and Redick's a better player than Tim Hardaway Jr., and then we can figure this out. So if you were so desperate for Tim Hardaway Jr., it's about discouraging and restricted free agency. We cannot say that enough, because here's how restricted free agency usually works. You talk to a team. They scream up and down about the other team that gave their restricted free agent the offer. They say how stupid the offer is. Then the team matches it, and they keep him. All right? So I don't think he's going to get matched, but that's what happens. Like the league, I can't believe the other team did this. That's so stupid. They offer him way too much money. I'm like, yeah, you just matched it, though. And they're like, yeah, we know. We had to keep the guy. So
it's an insane system. I feel like the Knicks, they almost had to make some news that wasn't negative, and you're starting to you're running out of players at this point.
Yeah.
You're running out, and you're figuring what you're going to do with the cap room. You don't know what you're going to do with Carmelo Anthony yet, and you have to do something to make people in New York go, hey, wait, the Knicks did something.
No, I think half of them are saying, what did the Knicks just do? I mean, more than half. They're in shock like myself. All right, Carmelo Anthony, we wait. We know about Adrian Wojnarowski's report that he's open, Melo is, to lifting his no trade to Houston or Cleveland. I know we ask you about this daily. What do you think is going to happen here?
Well, by the way, I just
Yeah.
want to say it's about time Woj started putting his dues in here and putting it,
yeah,
what has he done?
Really, not much.
checked it up.
But yeah,
All right.
like,
Ryan, really, I mean,
The
this
people that I talked to on this one, the Houston trade idea is something that would work better for Melo, whereas Cleveland, I think, is really hoping that he still is bought out. I think Cleveland would like to take Melo and bring him into the group that is already there. They could dump some of the contracts, but they don't want to move a Tristan Thompson. They don't want to move a Kevin Love for him. They want to add Melo to what they have out there now. Houston, the problem there is the contracts they'd be sending out and all the different variations that I've seen of this trade are all long-term deals. And we thought prior to the Tim Hardaway offer sheet that the Knicks were not interested in longer-term deals. Ryan Anderson is owed a ton of money. Eric Gordon was terrific last year, but Eric Gordon was terrific in Houston's system. Okay, so when you bring in Eric Gordon to the Knicks, he's not the Eric Gordon that you saw with the Rockets where it's wide-open shots all over the place. So those are not things I would still think, post this Hardaway Jr. news, that the Knicks would not be interested in taking on all that salary just to move Melo out.
in discussions with somebody in the Knicks organization, they haven't heard anything literally about that Carmelo has, in fact, waived his no-trade clause. It's only been media reports to them. So this is sort of, okay, just like a team waiting for an offer sheet to see if this is actually a true figure. They want to hear from Carmelo Anthony. I still think much of this happens after they meet with David Griffin, former Cleveland Cavaliers GM, and they get somebody in that team president thing, because I don't know if James Dolan, as much as he has a great relationship with Steve Mills, is comfortable with him making all these moves at this point.
Yeah, I'll tell you. It's a soap opera.
Linda's not hiding it today.
I'm not. I can't help it. I'm just.
This is tough love from you, though.
I represent, like, I'd say 98% of Knicks fans the way I feel today. Ryan and Mike, we'll hear from you later. Thanks so much. Tony.
Linda.